Good morning everyone, welcome to my channel. So this is video number 11 for the Jessie Chorley The Garden. So we are going to do the dress. If you haven't watched video number 10, I'd recommend you go back, have a little look at that, and you'll see how this dress idea came to be, as it was a toss-up of putting it here or on the heart up the top here. So we decided in the end to use it on the dress, and my plan is to embroider the floral design. So number 10 video will show you sort of how I did this template and why I did the template, and then I've been able to position the dress in exactly where I need it due to having cut this out. Now when I did cut it from the fabric, I did cut the edge 1/4 of an inch bigger than my little paper template here, and that's allowed me to turn that edge underneath, because I've decided to a needle turn edge this little panel of fabric. Now the reason I've done that is it will give this piece more of a puffy feeling, so that it will sort of feel like a dress, like a skirt. Like a skirt. It's got a little bit of air under it and it's a little bit puffier. It'll help it sort of come forward in my panel as well. The flower will be behind. The tree is coming forward and around it anyway, because the leaves are going to be drifting up onto the hem of the skirt. So if you remember way back when we did the tree, I actually left 2 leaves off being done, one on this corner and one down here on the bottom of the skirt. So this is the time when we will cut an extra couple leaves and place them into position. So I've done one in the suede and one in the fabric, and then they can be completed with a little stitch up the center to hold them into position. So it'll look like the tree is in front of the skirt. Okay, so that's one little task that will be done, is completing the 2 little leaves. Now I'll just pop them to one side so I don't lose them. So I've gone ahead and pinned down the edge of this skirt, so then I can easily come back just with needle and thread and stitch it all down with a little slip stitch. I've done this for the main reason is I don't want the fabric to twist, because what you might find without using pins first is you might start up here, and then as you work down this side, the fabric could twist a little bit and you might get down to this opposite edge and there'll be nothing left to turn under. So pinning it first is just a great way to make sure that it works, it's in position, and then you can stitch away and yeah, not need to worry about it. Now we have a needle here that Jessie has sketched in underneath that has temporarily been lost. So my thoughts with that is I will embroider it. I don't think I'll use fabric to highlight it. I think I'll just do a satin stitch. And what I'm thinking of doing is making it look like the needle tucks in underneath this flower. So I'll bring the design down onto the dress, and then I'll bring it so it sort of appears over here as it comes through. So I might extend that through there, so it'll look like the needle's going into the fabric behind those flowers and coming back out. That's my thought at the moment, but we'll see. I'll embroider this first with long stitch, short stitch, and then I'm going to do seed stitch using this soft Tiffany blue embroidery thread. It's 503 if you're wondering the number and wish to use it yourself. I'm going to seed stitch right around the whole exterior of the skirt with the embroidery of the flower and the leaves to the front. So it's going to help create some more dimension is what I'm trying to say. Okay, so those decisions are definite. Now as for the bodice, my thoughts are creating a little apron. So I've got a half piece of one of my little doily snippets. I'm going to turn the edges in just a little bit to get it to her waistline size. And then I'm going to stitch that down into position there. So it will look like she has a little apron on, a lace apron. Then her belt, if you can see in behind there, she's got a little band, a belt. So two schools of thought. I could just embroider it, but I think because the skirt's going to be so puffy and really coming out from her bodice, I need to do something reasonably solid in there. So I found this trim. It's a ribbon that has little flowers attached to it. Now they're only glued on, so they're relatively easy to flick off if the colours don't match. So I'm thinking of doing a bit of a combination of them. I really like those little flowers. They're in our tones, the olives, the creams, and the dusty pinks into the reds. But I really like the blue ribbon. And as you can see from those little flowers, they're just not quite right. There's a rainbow one there that doesn't match our piece. And even that blue, I'm not a real lover of. It's okay. That little rose is not too bad. And that one's not too bad. So, and I really like the effect that the blue gives our piece. So my first option is just the blue ribbon, just to finish her dress line. But then I'm getting elaborate here, and I had considered using the blue ribbon and then rearranging the flowers so that these flowers joined that piece and they came into position. So I'm not 100% sure yet. It will be of a combination of something like that. I really do like how those flowers finish the top of her skirt off. So how we do that yet, we'll see, but I'm definitely going to be using elements from that trim. Now, when it comes to the actual bodice, I'm thinking it's going to be quite simple because we've got so much going on down here in the skirt. So my thoughts at the moment, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to do this, is I found a little piece of lace that has a scalloped shape about it, which sort of reminds me of these lapels on her bodice. So I've just disconnected the little flower from those little panels so that my lace pivots a little bit better. Otherwise it was just puckering as I tried to get it around that corner. Now I may need to even do a little tuck on this outer top edge here to get it to really sit flat, but we'll see how it goes once I start stitching it in. But now that they've been disconnected, excuse me, now that they've been disconnected, I can actually shape that lace with some pins so you can see. I can shape the lace a little bit better to suit the drawing of the little dress. And I've left the flower in position because it's really sweet and it looks like it's nearly a brooch at the top of her lapel. Okay, so I've just pinned that there. And I'll bring that up to the camera so you can see how by using that lace, we've given her a little lace collar. So I'm thinking the rest of her little dress will be just embroidered. I might seed stitch in here with a colour that complements. I won't know or make that decision until I think the rest of it is done. That'll be sort of the last thing I do. Whether the seed stitch from the blue skirt continues up into that area and that would tie the whole outfit together by using that blue up there. I'm just not sure. I'm not even sure what colour I will use around the outline of the bodice. It could be red, it could be the blue. I'm just not sure. I think I'll start with this first. I'll get these trims into position and then just sort of see where the bodice goes. But I'm positive I'm not using fabric in there. I do have some buttons here that I need to have a think about. Whether I get more of these little flowers and continue them down. I do like that idea, so they become the buttons. So yeah, we'll see. We'll got a few decisions yet to make. I'll bring that up to the screen so you can see how I've pinned that in there. Then the little lace apron that will happen We'll see what happens with the flowers, but I'm thinking they will come across there somehow. But I do like the blue ribbon. It's nice and strong and is a good defining line, but it may not be needed because the flowers will be enough. And then we come into the panel itself, which will be all embroidered. And not to forget, we have a leaf here to put on and another one here, which will also happen. And then the needle. How will this needle play out? I'm pretty sure it will weave through the fabric of the skirt. Okay, everyone, we will leave it at that. I've got lots of work to do in this little section of our panel. So I'll stop the video, and when I come back, I will either show you my progress or show you the completed piece. It'll just depend on how quickly it sort of all comes together. Okay, everyone, I will see you all very soon. Bye. Hello, everyone. I'm back. I just wanted to turn the camera on and show you where I'm at with this little dress, because I've adjusted a few things and thought a few things out. So I thought before it gets too far along and I completely forget some of the little details, I thought I'd better just pop back. Okay, the first thing I did, other than all this embroidery, is I worked out the bodice. So we might just go through that first, and that way we can then have a little chat about the skirt. So I decided to couch some thread in red for the outline of the bodice, and I also stitched into position the little collar, and then I added some pearls to the edge of the collar, and then the little flower that was part of that lace, I got another 3, and I plan to use them as the 4 little buttons down the center of the dress. Now, just on the collar and that lace, I ended up turning the lace upside down, and I'll show you why. I'll bring it up to the camera. The good side, if you will, of the lace was very shiny. I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but that's got a real pearly, shimmery finish to it, and it just didn't look right, especially with the little apron, which is a sort of a dull cotton color. So what I decided to do is turn them upside down and stitch it that way down, because that gave more of a soft, muted tone. So that's why that little one is there. So I'll just use my needle and thread and secure that so that I don't lose it. And then I'll go on to what I did around the exterior of the dress. I couched into position the red thread. Now I thought I'd show you that as well, because I tried a different technique. When we've been doing it in the past, it's always had a contrasting color, I think, from memory. Like the blue would have the white holding it into position. So what I did this time is I used the red and the red thread again to hold it into position. And instead of using a needle to put a line of thread in first, as in laying it down, and then coming back with a second thread and stitching it down, I did it all in one move. So I just wanted to show you that little technique before I sort of got too far along and forgot about it. Okay, I just finished this little flower. Okay. So that's semi-secured, and I can come back and finish that off when I'm done. So I'll just bring that up to the camera. It'll be 4 little flowers. It's a little bit crooked. I have to readjust that a little bit. 4 little flowers, the lace little collar, and then, yeah, that I believe is finished. I don't think I'll do any seed stitch through here at this stage, but who knows? Changes rapidly. Once you start doing a little bit, it's sort of you think of something else you can do. All right, so I've just got my needle ready to show you this couching of the bodice, and I've left the last little bit here, the little shoulder seam, to do. I've done everything else, and I love how the couching, by putting that little stitch over the main outline has given it like a little pinched look. So it sort of has made it, I think, a little bit 3D, as if it is sitting on someone's body and it's sort of bending around to the curves of her body, even though it's not on a body, but I just like the effect. So what I'm going to do is just show you how I did it. So I'm going to bring the needle up here at the shoulder. I'm going to lay the thread down and just use my finger to gently hold it in position. Reinsert the needle at the other end of the area I'm doing. And because this little dress has lots of small little sections, the biggest is the side seams up to her shoulder, it's a perfect technique that you can use. So my thread is now sitting there, and if I pull it, you can sort of see that it's still loose. So I'm just going to pull it, not firm, but just semi-taut. You don't want to be too tight because it'll pucker up. Now, because I went down here at the side, I'm going to come back up there and secure that first little stitch of the couching process. So I'm now going to move along about 1/8 of an inch. Oop, lost my thread. Okay, let's rethread, regroup. Okay, and done. I've spent quite a few hours on this little dress so far, so I thought there's at least 3, 4, 5 hours of stitching left. So I thought I'd better come in and just show you where I'm at, because there are a few little tricks and tips I've sort of come across that will help you out when you're doing yours. So I'm just working my way across that shoulder seam. So if it was a big area, you would bring your needle up, lay down your thread, your primary thread, for want of a better description, and then push it in and just let it loose until you come back along with your anchoring thread. Maybe a second thread would be your normal procedure. And then you can always adjust the bottom thread if it starts to sort of move on you. But being this is just a small little area, it's not like you're bending around the outside of the swan or anything. So you would leave it loose. And what I've done is pretty much completed that all in one thread, shot across, anchored it as I worked my way back to the beginning. So it sort of is a little bit quicker. So I'm just going to end that off. That's the little dress completed now, or the bodice part of the little dress. So I'll just leave that needle to one side. Okay, so her dress is done, and the collar I'm happy with. I can still see some of Jessie's little blue sketchy lines in there. I'm not going to do anything with them. I sort of don't mind them being there. It's sort of a little detail that my eye doesn't see unless I know it's there and I go looking for it. And even then, I'm not too concerned about it. It's a little bit of Jessie poking through. So the apron, like I said in the first part of this video, I just turned over the raw edges and stitched it down so that it was, won't fray or come apart. Now the flowers on this dress, let's get this around again. I have embroidered the red flowers and I've started the seed stitch. So what you'll see is I even did the little buds at the top here. Now they are technically going to be covered by the apron, and I thought, look, I'll do them anyway so that if the apron does flick up, at least it's completed. I'm not going to stitch that apron down. I'm going to leave it a little bit loose there. I've come as far as probably 2/3 of it, stitching it down, and the rest I've just let move around. Now with the embroidering of the actual flower, I used a few threads to get some sort of definition and tone into the flower, so I'm just reaching over and grabbing them so I can show you. The dark one in the middle is the one we've been using to stitch pretty much everywhere else. It's the stranded cotton 221, so we've used it over here, and that gave me the dark throat to the flower just using a satin stitch. I then wanted to bring in a little bit of this dusty pink. So I started satin stitching in the center of this big flower and it just got lost. So I needed something a little bit more substantial. So I ended up just doing a series of little French knots, and I'm really happy with the way that that came together. I then added some beads, some little pearls, which we've used on the tree in the center. The center of this flower was actually a blue. So I really needed to do something to disguise the fact that it was a blue. I'm just grabbing the fabric just to show you again so that you can see why I use those pearls in the center, because it's this grey, dirty blue. So that got rid of that issue. And then those petals that are to the side of the center, that's where all the French knots went. So you can sort of see how I painted it in, so to speak. Now the other point I wanted to make is, I'll just bring back the fabric. In that petal, you can see, I need a pointer. You can see there's actually 3 reds. There's the deep red right deep in the center, and it also appears around the outer edge. Then there's another red halfway up that petal, and then this pinky tone. So what I did, if you do use this fabric on your panels, is I did do the deep red in the center. That's the DMC 221. But then the next section of embroidery, I actually combined it into one color, because otherwise I think it would have got just too detailed and too messy. But this soft pink didn't get lost in the equation. It became the French knots through this region here and on that little petal. So I hope that makes sense. I'll just remove this now and you'll sort of see. There's the deep red, the 221, going around the center and just in the throat of the big petal. I then came with the French knots and then the little pearls. Now this thread at the top here, which covers 2 of the prints underneath, is actually a pearl cotton that I picked up at Spotlight here in Australia, and the number is 809. And it's just a lovely raspberry red. It's a little bit fresher than the DMC cotton. So I'll bring that up here and show you that. But it still works. And then with the little pink French knots in the center, that sort of brought a little bit of light into the piece. Now I didn't stitch around that outer edge. It's like a sharp little edge there that the designer has put on that flower. It's got a real point to it. And what I thought is, if I stitch that, I will lose that definition because my thread will look round and soft. So I left it, and I like it because it's helped create more layers. So applying the same principle, these little flowers were then done. Okay, a little bit of the dark in around the throat, lots of French knots, and then the raspberry to finish off the petal. And that raspberry, because it's quite a thick thread, it's given it quite a dimensional feel to the piece. I don't know if you can see, there's actually quite a raised petal there now. Okay, this flower was a bit of a trick because it's quite a, I don't know, an ugly little flower. See if I can find it on this piece. Yeah, here we go. See that there? It's quite an unusual little flower, and I looked at it so many times thinking, well, how do I stitch that? So I actually started with some lazy daisy stitches to try and get that circular bulbous feel, and then I went over the top of the lazy daisy stitch with just some stab stitches, and it really helped to define that circular shape. So it's a bit of a tricky one. It was probably harder than this, even though this looks more elaborate. This was trickier. Then I just put a touch of that pink, coming right up to the camera, a touch of that pink in there, only a little bit, and a couple of the pearls. Okay. I did put a little stitch over here on this bud, even though it's disappearing around the skirt, just a little hint of that red. And then underneath there, I just did a few little stitches and a little bit of the pink. Now, which brings me to this flower. Now, he's quite an unusual little flower, and he's not in our tones that we've been using. So we've got two options. We can just embroider it just like we have through here. But I've come up with another idea that I think I'm going to use, which sometimes I just wonder how these things come together, but they do. It's quite unusual. You'll see what I mean. Remember we were talking about the waist here, and I really wanted to put some flowers in there, and I had thought of using the blue with the random roses on it. Decided not to. I'm going to use the pink. So I've gone ahead and removed one of the flowers already, revealing just those three, which I think is enough, because I'll turn that ribbon under on itself and then get a nice folded edge. Look, I need to put it down. I need 3 sets of hands here. So that's where I've removed the flower, and I'm turning it under so it'll be nice and neat, and I'll be able to then trim that excess off, have a nice folded edge, and that then will stitch down onto her waistline there. Okay, and it is big enough to have the 3 flowers. I love the fact that the trim had a pearl in it straight away. I'm considering changing that pearl and using my little pearls, because then it'll all match. Gee, I'm all over the place. I hope you can see that. So I will be flicking that one out and restitching one of my pearls in there. And I'll probably put a pearl in each of those flowers as well, just to sort of tie it all together. Now, the flower that I flicked off, now where is it? Have I lost it already? No, I got it. This is the flower I removed. Now look at the colours. What's the odds of this? It's unbelievable how these things come together. That little flower, I'll change the pearl, and I'm going to stitch it onto her dress. So that takes care of this weird little design. It was hard enough to stitch this one, let alone doing this one and having no red behind to sort of guide me. So this little flower is going to be used as a 3-dimensional piece right there, and it works. So love it, love it, love it. Okay, so that's the decision on the waistband. If you don't have access to some little rosettes, there are heaps of videos on how to make them. So they're quite easy to make. Once you find a good video that shows you, they are quite simple to make. But having said that, you can pick up little rosettes everywhere at cheap shops as well. So that one there is just 3 little pieces of ribbon that they've just brought together and then stitched it down to create that tiny itty bitty flower. Now that's a really simple flower. You could even just do 3 of those in the ribbon that suits your color scheme. Okay, so you've got plenty of options in a rosette belt. Okay, so we've talked about the bodice. This flower here I ended up completing. I had thinking all along that I was going to put a button here, but then when I found this red flower braid, it just was perfect. It also matches, it drifts the colour off into the piece from the skirt. I had already stitched the 2 little leaves in a ribbon that was left over from doing the bottom flower area. I just then come through with some an olive colour 469 and did some stab stitch and long stitch just to finish the stem of that flower, and then stitch the little guy into position, which I think just matches beautifully. I've started the seed stitch, as you can see on the bottom of that skirt, and I've used this guy. It's a number 8 crochet cotton, 503, and it just matched beautifully. I'm glad I did that, because I wasn't, to be honest, a lover of this blue when I looked at the panel, but now that this has happened, it has sort of just taken away that big block and made it sort of just merge with my piece a lot more. So I've got a lot of seed stitch to do yet. I've decided I'm not going to do the needle in this video. I'm going to save it for when we come up over here, because there's just so much work here alone that there's plenty to do without going on to this needle. And the needle has this gorgeous thread. I sort of wanted to have a think about the colors that I would use there. So I will not be completing the needle in this particular video. I'll save it for another one. Okay, so what else did I want to mention? The fabric. I've done a little bit of research to try and find out exactly what this fabric is. Now, this is the little pack that I purchased a little while ago, which is part of the series. So I just wanted to show that to you. Now, in that range was quite a few colors, some reds, the blues, and then some neutrals. So if the blue doesn't suit your piece, but you do love the pattern, it is definitely a French General. That is the name of the what do they call it? The design pack. So it's by Moda, and that's the name of them. I will include a picture of all of the colors available in this series at the end of this video. So if you did want to go hunting for this particular fabric, and as you can see, this floral print, there's quite a lot in the range from this particular design. Now I'll just grab my red workbook, because this will show you that there is another color that might suit your panel better than the blue that I've used, especially if you haven't got any real blues. Have a look at that. That is the beigey tones with the same color flower and leaves and ribbon. So there are other options out there that you could use on your panel if the one that I'm using doesn't suit your color scheme. So, and I also wanted to show you that if you don't feel confident in stitching all of those, just bear with me as I find the other side of this. If you don't feel confident in stitching the flowers like I have, in my red workbook here, if you can see that little flower, all I did there is go around the outer edge of the flower with 2 of the stranded cottons in the red and just outlined it. That's all I did. So if you don't want to do the whole embroidery in the center, you don't need to. Just do little running stitches and outline the whole flower. So pretend that you've got a pencil in your hand and you're drawing it. That one there is stitched as well. The butterfly I stitched, the little buds, this little bud here, I don't know if you can see it. It's not real obvious, but I know it's there, especially when I touch it. I can feel the little stitches, and it's given a real nice quilted puffy feel. So there's another option. There's another one there I did, and the little buds. So you can certainly have less work for yourself and just do a running stitch. Here's the example of the running stitch going up this seam right up through there. So you can pretty much be as elaborate as you like or as little as you like. Okay. All right. I think I will stop the video there. That's giving you a bit of an update on where I'm at. I'll continue doing my seed stitch, and I need to have a good think about the stem of the flower, and then there's this ribbon holding the bunch of flowers together. I'm not 100% sure that I will embroider that, because I sort of love the flowers being the feature, and then the rest of it sort of just disappears. And I think the seed stitch will be enough of a feature in the background without having to embroider all that. So I'm still thinking about that, and it might be one of those things that I leave it for now and I pick this piece up in a year's time and I add something else to it. It's going to be the forever adding, if I find a nice button that suits these tones, there's nothing stopping you pulling it out and yeah, doing a little bit more embroidery. Okay everyone, I'll just stop it at that position and come back to you when it's completed. See you soon. Okay, I'm back and I've finished. So just a quick little update on where I went. Finished all the seed stitch. I have also sketched in where this needle is going to go. I lined up my ruler with the piece at the top and the little point at the bottom, and I've just drawn on there a little red line. So I'm going to have the needle coming out of the skirt there and finishing, and then I'm just going to bring it into the edge of the skirt just a little bit here to have it sort of poking through the skirt this side and then coming out at the flowers. At this stage I haven't embroidered the foliage or the bow. I haven't found a cotton that I really love to do it. So I'm going to leave it at this stage, and I can always come back to it at a later date if I decide to use some particular cotton that I've come across in my travels. But at the moment I just don't have the perfect colour. The closest colour I found was the one I've used for the seed stitch. So I sort of, for the ribbon I'm talking about, need something a little bit different there, I think. So that is my little dress. I'll just bring it up to the camera so you can see all of that seed stitch. It came up beautifully. You can see the red line of my needle there where it's going to enter the skirt and come out at the bottom end. Then we've got our little flowers are now stitched into position. That's the three-dimensional one that came from that little ribbon is there. There's our little buttons and our collar with the pearl detail. I also changed the pearls out on this to match the pearls everywhere else, so they're all the same. That one there I also had to change. So that's the little dress. Okay everyone, thank you for joining me once again, and I look forward to catching up with you in the next video. Not sure where we'll go. I'm going to have a little bit of a think, and yeah, I'll come back to you soon. I'll see you in a week. Bye.